one of the major issues, just listening to and looking at some stats this week, was Derek Carr was only pressured 3 times. Do you think, Ant, that the Cowboys are going to get less than 3 pressures? Last week, I think they had 17.
Micah Parsons had 9 himself. Micah Parsons had 9 pressures himself. The Carolina Panthers, even though their offense is dog shit, this proves that their defense is not doing anything either. So 3 pressures in a full game, like even 3 sacks is good, but it's nothing impressive. But 3 pressures, that's almost hard to believe.
So do they differentiate sacks from pressures then, I guess?
Oh, yeah. Well, a pressure is like you get, it's within a certain amount when he gets the ball. Then you have hits if the quarterback got hit. Like Mike only had 1 sack last week, but he had 9 pressures.
Right.
But the NFL's starting to take these pressures into account way more. Same with like PFF.
Yeah.
Because a guy like Mike is always highly rated because these pressures, the quarterback's out of sync. Right.
So we're having to throw the ball quicker.
So having Derek Carr only have 3 times where he was under distress is pretty wild. And in my mind, the Cowboys could have 3 pressures on him in the first series. If they get a couple first downs, there's a high chance that the Cowboys have as many pressures on the Saints as the Panthers had the whole week.
Yeah, and it's not just Micah. Obviously, we saw both Lawrence and Kendricks get 2 sacks each, and then who got the 6th?
So it was Lawrence, Kendricks, Micah, and
Overshown.
Overshown.
No?
Yeah, and Overshown.
So it's like, I mean, I think that it's going to be a much different game for the New Orleans Saints. It's going to be probably much closer than I think. Like, I think Cowboys are really going to blow them out, but I don't think we're going to be seeing any team, Cowboys or Saints, running away with this game, at least as early as both of them did.
Well, the Saints have the chance to, they have an explosive offense, way more explosive than the Browns looked. Like, you have Alvin Kamara, you have their plethora of wide receivers, you have Olave, you have Rashid. Is that the dude?
Yeah.
Has that take it off the top.
Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah, like he had a great touchdown early in the game against the Panthers. What happens when the Cowboys, this front 7 and Mike Zimmer, are against a quarterback that's not as mobile as a Deshaun Watson? Deshaun Watson escaped a bunch. Is Derek Carr going to be able to have that escapability when Micah Parsons is running his 4.3 speed down at him?
Mm-hmm. And, well, no, this is interesting because I think it's like I don't know if everyone saw it how you set it up last year, but I think that was like a fair way to look at those first couple of weeks for sure. I certainly agree with you. This year, it feels a lot different. Like you mentioned, they were the underdogs going up against a Cleveland Browns team that on paper looked good. Albeit some injuries on the O-line, the Cowboys handled them very, very easily. It wasn't really a contest. Now we move to the New Orleans Saints coming off of a 47-10 victory over the Panthers.
Molly-whopping, some might say.
Molly-whopping, our boy Big Chris would say. And, take that for what it's worth as well. But we're coming into a game where, again, I think Cowboys are favorites in this one, but it's not a gimme game as I thought it was going to be when we were kind of breaking down. Like, I thought we would have more trouble with Cleveland than New Orleans Saints. And now it looks like New Orleans Saints is going to give us some better competition than Cleveland did. So.
Well, and people will say, well, the Saints only beat the Panthers, but what are the Saints supposed to do to the Panthers? They're supposed to beat them 47-10. If a team's good, they do that to bad teams. They smoke them, right? Like 47-10, that is a wide margin of victory, right?
Yeah.
Like they put up a 40 burger in week 1. That's very good. They have the tools to go tit for tat. Sure, the Cowboys might score on their defense, but they have the offensive prowess to also go punch for punch.
Well, let's have a look at how the Saints did last week. I think that should be pretty good for us right there. We'll go back and forth. First, I just want to look at the Carolina quarterbacks here.
Awful.
2 interceptions by Bryce Young, and he was sacked four times for 26 yards. It feels like 4 sacks isn't a lot after the Cowboys went out and just ate up the Deshaun Watson. But that's, I think, I think over under, I would say 3.5. If you get 3 sacks, okay, that's reasonable. But 4 sacks, that's starting to push into where it can be a drive killer. It's killing a drive 4 times, right?
Yep.
I don't know where those sacks happened, but just look, purely based off the numbers. And then also just the passing metrics, like 13 for 31.
Under 50%.
5.4
That's
average.
like 45, no, less than that.
Yeah.
Like 42%
So,
completion.
so just taking from there, we can kind of look at the defense for the New Orleans Saints. They didn't really have, or they were so awesome that Young had nothing to throw to.
Right.
The other side of that could be like Young just is not ready to be an NFL quarterback week 1 of the 2024 NFL season. And look who came in, Andy Dalton. For
The Red Rifle, 1 play for a bunch of zeros.
and then we can slide over here to Derek Carr. Didn't really have he kind of had a very Dak Prescott-y game. 19 for 23, 200 yards, 8.7 average, 3 tugs, 1 sack, and 84.9 QBR. He had a better rating, but
Very high accuracy, though.
high accuracy,
High touchdowns.
but only 200 yards. I think the Saints probably fell into the same place, whereas like we don't need to make any risky plays. And obviously, you score 47 points, your opponent scores 10. That's going to be the case.
The zero turnovers, though. Derek Carr took care of the ball, man, and when he was asked to throw the ball, it was a completion. Almost a very high 90%. So
yeah,
Derek Carr, he's been in the league a long time. He's been on a couple teams, but he obviously has the quarterback position figured out. He only got sacked 1 time for 1 yard.
Yeah. So he was getting the ball out and he was making smart passes. And obviously they were running the ball. We go down here. This was a problem last year with the Cowboys. Didn't really seem to be a problem against the Browns. Mind you, they only had
Jerome Ford.
Quality running back. I liked him last year just from a fantasy perspective. Like I liked his potential. And he had a couple big games, I believe, when filling in for Chubb. But obviously he's no Nick Chubb. But when we come to play New Orleans this Sunday at 10 a.m. PST, 1 p.m. EST, we're going to have to face off against Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams. And both of these guys can run the ball and have been leaders in the backfield on different teams.
Well, they have a different skill set. Jamal's kind of that change of pace a little bit, and Alvin Kamara is just that guy that can do it all, right? Like you look at his stats from the game against Carolina, 15 carries, 83 yards, 5.5 average, and a touchdown with a long of 17. That's a very good game out of your running back.
Yeah, very, very good. And Williams following up. They're not as impressive. 11 carries, 38 yards, 3.5 average. But he also got a touchdown and a long of 14. So both these guys can break off long plays. And then, of course, don't forget about Taysom Hill, 5 for 35 and 7-yard average.
Kind of their switchblade. Kind of does a little bit of it all. He plays a little tight end, plays a little bit of running back, plays a little bit of quarterback. When he goes out there, you got to pay attention to him. And you don't see a lot of players like that in the NFL where they're going to go to each spot and they can hurt you from anywhere.
But this might be our first tale of the tape, kind of. New Orleans rushing total 37 carries. So 13 more carries than they passed the ball in this game last week. 180 yards, 4.9 average, 2 tugs, and a long of 17. So pretty consistent running.
If your stats look like that as a running back room, you're more than likely winning the game.
Absolutely.
Almost every time. If you have 180 yards for almost a 5 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns, you dominated that game, is how I see that. Like, if you just showed me that stat alone
and said who won this game,
I would 80% to 90% of the time bet on the team that had that.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I think what's interesting here is what's going to be more of the issue. Is it going to be that the offense just wasn't needing to pass the ball, and that's why Derek Carr didn't only threw for 200 yards, but he did have 3 touchdowns. Obviously, that's significant. Or is it just that they're going to run the ball down the Dallas Cowboys' throat?